I think that this year, by the end of the year, that former two low numbers for the Dow will be intersected and broken, and that will also put pressure on the stock market in general. I think that before the year's up, a 6,000 Dow is possible. And as I said, I think gold's going to have a very good year, and silver as well. And so I'm trying to think of some of the real important things. You talked about pick-and-pay loans. Yeah, they're there, and they've already started to have problems with them. And the dropout rate will be about 50% because, and these people have good credit, because it was simply overextended. And they just can't make their payments because many of them just paid the interest on the loan, and the loan might have been for, say, $1.5 million, and now the house is worth, $800,000. So the owner, we should call him the leaser, but the owner of the house has to walk away.
Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Bob is simply reiterating the statement that this next year, the pick-a-pay loans, that's pick-a-pay loans, are going to begin to default. Could you explain to our listeners what pick-a-pay loans are? Because most people have never even heard of them. They really don't understand these predatory practices that are out there, and there are about 2 million pick-a-pay loans, at least according to a recent article in the New York Times. Some people say only 1 million, but the New York Times says 2 million. What's a pick-a-pay loan, and why is it like a cake of dynamite sitting over a campfire?
Well, first of all, people who got those loans had good credit. Secondly, they expected the market to continue to go up indefinitely, and of course, that never happens. And so with that in mind, they took out loans which are called option loans, adjustable rate mortgages, and they had a number of options, and most of them wanted to play in the real estate market and still stay in the motel or office building or apartment building that they had purchased. And so these loans are constructed in a way where you can kind of do anything you want with them. And the main thing is to avoid high payments. So people were paying low payments, and what happened was that some of them went a little bit too far, and then the real estate market came down, and the $1.5 million house that they bought dropped in value perhaps to $700,000, and that's their equity in the house, and they're wondering whether they should walk away, which they should.
Okay, so I think the thing was...
And so what they were doing essentially was paying interest only.
Right, they were paying interest only, and so the actual, and sometimes weren't even paying all the amount of interest, so the amount they owed every month at the end of the month was not decreasing, it was actually increasing. And that was fine as long as the value of the house kept going up. And, you were just like, you're just getting this great house, and you weren't having to pay very much monthly payments. But every month, the mortgage actually increased, didn't decrease. And then, of course, when the price of the housings began to collapse, why, of course, here you have these people who, have a $1.5 million loan for an $800,000 house, and they're in real trouble. And then they... down the line, of course, then they renegotiate the loans, and there's no way that people can make the payments. I mean, they go from maybe $2,500 a month to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, and then, of course, they're just going to have to default and lose the home. But then, of course, the bank's going to lose a lot of money too, because they've lent $750,000 or $1.5 million on this home, and it's only going to bring in maybe $500,000 when it sells. So there are going to be real problems out there.
Yeah, and they're going to be ongoing. This will last another 4 years, and the subprime and the ALSA loans will end at the end of June. But the amount of money involved in the real estate and the real estate loans that pertain to option arms, pick and pay loans, is exceedingly larger than the amount of money that came into play with the loans that were made to lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that it's important that people understand that, right now the Fed has said they're going to put out about $500 or $600 billion. They don't tell us where the money's coming from. They're just going to start buying up the, I don't know whether it's the Fed or the Treasury, but they're going to buy up the defective bonds that were created by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So they're going to put out $500 or $600 billion to buy up these loans or these bonds, to try to, these are troubled assets, you might call them. But the difficulty is that's just the beginning. There's not $500 billion. It's probably $2 or $3 trillion worth of these faulty and defective loans. Where's the money going to come from? They're going to create it out of nothing, just like they're doing over in Zimbabwe today, just printing more and more and more money to try to keep the system going. And the more money they print, the further they go in the hole. People look over there and they say, well, 260 million%, a year or 230 million%, it varies, But, the difference between $230 million a year inflation rate and $260 million, 260 million% inflation, well, what it really doesn't make that much difference. They're all going to destroy that society, and how long it'll be before it happens here? Remember, our government installed and he's kept that government in Zimbabwe all this time, but they can't let the American people know that. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest is Bob Chapman of the International Forecaster, and certainly, Bob, what do you hear as far as the significance of the war in the Middle East? What's really going on over there? Why would the Hamas actually precipitate a situation that would draw Israel into an attack and kill so many Palestinians? And of course, is there any way out of this war over there? Will it expand, or is it just going to smolder on with more and more people getting killed on both sides?
Well, it's interesting that I've received several different takes on this from intelligence people, and none of them agree with one another, and that's not unusual. But it's a hard one to call. The Zionist state is an expansionary one. I think it's a fascistic state. And it would be natural for them to have ultimately gone into the Gaza Strip or Lebanon or Syria, which are nearby, and do what they're doing. They want more land, and they also want to control the Middle East. At the same time, the Illuminists, which include them incidentally, they want to start another war. What configuration that's going to take, I don't know, because there's so many possibilities. I've named some of the countries that could get involved, and then there's still Georgia and Kosovo, and we got a hot war going in Pakistan, and India could be pulled into it as well. So, and India's going to have, I wrote a piece today based on a report I got from Mumbai in India. They're talking 10 million unemployed soon, in addition to what they've already got. And when you have situations like this, it calls for war. War is a cover for the economic and financial situation historically that has turned into something dreadful, and they want to make people's thoughts and ideas and attention be focused on this war that they've created, and people become more concerned about getting killed in the war than they are in not eating in the United States. So,
no, hold that thought. We'll be back here in just a moment. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Bob was just saying that as he looks at the situation over in the Near East, he feels this is a prelude to an expanded war, and we have to ask ourselves why Hamas kept lobbing missiles on into Israel. Obviously, Israel was going to respond. Who's financing Hamas? Nobody ever asked that. It was created by the CIA. It may very well still have ties to the CIA.